Welcome back for part 12 of this original character story. Your votes and your comments help to decide where the plot is going to go, and I fill in the rest with improvisational storytelling. Here we are then with part 12. Left completely alone on the water's edge, Prince Erasmus could only stare. There was nothing. Not a ripple, not a disturbance in the water, nothing. And Darrow was gone. Gone with the creatures who had mostly vanished into the waters. Some were still swimming out on the far edges of the lake, like ghosts pirouetting silently. But there was nothing to suggest that anyone had stood beside the man a few moments ago. Except Darrow's bag. It sat slumped on the side of the lake, but no Darrow at all. And slowly, from the prince's throat, there rose a sound he had not made since he was a little child. A rasping cry of a whimper, desperate, rising from his lips. But he could not wait. He swallowed the sound down and ran into the water. It was icy, biting at his calves, but on he went, and then he dove, smashing through the surface of the cold, cold water and diving down, down, down. It takes maybe 20 seconds for the prince to hit the bottom. He smacks into the dirt, tugging up weeds in his hands, choking on dark, dank water. He tugs and heaves, scrambling until his hands are caked in grime and his lungs are on fire. But there is nothing down there. No Darrow, nothing. Just muddy blackness and reeds at the bottom of the lake. Finally, unable to stand it any longer, he turns, heading back to the surface to draw a breath. But the surface is gone. Gone like the assassin under its waters. The water is black in every direction. The prince cannot see a thing. There aren't even any white shapes of those creatures diving or floating high above him. There is nothing but the inky blackness. Suddenly, his dreams of late come flooding back to him as he opens his mouth to gasp at air that is not there. It's closing in, it's pressing in, caving in. He cannot see the crowd from his dreams, but he feels them still, crushing into him, suffocating. He will die down here. Somewhere in his soul he remembers, I always planned for it to end this way. A memory flashes from when he told Darrow. When I'm the furthest away from home that I'd ever been, I was going to find all the prettiest rocks I could gather, carry them into a lake and just disappear. He was now truly the furthest away from home he had ever been, and here he was, at the bottom of a lake, disappearing. Darrow cannot see. He can only feel. Something is closed tight around him. He doesn't know what. It's not cold like the water. It's warm, almost, and soft. Soft like down, like flowers, like petals, like feathers. Feathers, pale feathers cocooning him as his head drifts in the water. He cannot see. He can only feel. It is cold, so cold. His limbs are shivering, and he is missing something. He cannot remember what it is. His arms hang heavy. Shouldn't he be happy now, in the great empty void? They would understand. Those creatures, they promised they would understand. He would never feel so alone. But he was. He was alone. And this void was black. No white expanse of nothing, just pitch dark black. And something was missing. Was it his soul? The silence grew louder, and Darrow drifted. Erasmus was shivering too. The waters were so cold he must freeze. His fingers twitched. Everything burned, everything hurt. Was this drowning? It was not peaceful. The poets had lied. This was fire underwater. But as he waited for all-consuming death to take him, it did not. The pain remained, his lungs screaming, but still he hung there, suspended in the gloom. The prince began to scream. It blistered his throat, churning into muffled nothingness in the water, but still he was not dead. Unless this was death. He thought of all the ways he could have met his fate. Drowning, smashed up in the wreck of the carriage, stabbed through the heart by an assassin. Darrow was down here. Dead or not, he had to find him. So the prince twisted in the water. Everything screamed, everything burned, but he could still move. He struck out, downwards, or what he thought was down. But he did not find weeds. He did not find dirt, or gravel, or ground. He swam for hours, and then days, and then weeks, and then years. His skin turned grey, his hands withered, his hair grew long, black washed away into red, then grey. He'd long since forgotten everything. He could think only of the screaming pain in his lungs and of Darrow. Fragments of memory hung around him like scattered pieces of a broken mirror, each reflecting back at him pieces of the life he knew he had led. Darrow was in all of them. Then, something loomed out of the dark. Something pearlescent and white, perfect in the black. Finally, he reached it. Weeds tangled up all around the object, as it sat somehow at the bottom of all the blackness. Erasmus ran his hands over the surface. He swam up, looking for an opening. Was Darrow inside? It was a long rectangle, deep and sealed, carved with ornate leaves weaving around every side. He swam slowly and looked at the top. The lid was built around a sculpted figure. It lay peacefully in the marble, hands clasped over its heart, with one ring on the left hand. Its robes swirled almost as though they could move in the water. The face wore a beard and long waves of hair. Erasmus looked. The eyes were closed, but it felt so familiar. He looked and looked, searching for recognition. And very, very slowly, it dawned on him. That face was one he had seen before. In every mirror he had ever looked at, the face carved in the marble was his own. The marble prince was some 50 years or so older than he was, or how old he thought he was. He could no longer tell. How long had he been in this lake? How long had they been in those woods? How long had anything been, really? But still, he could not deny the carved sculpture on the tomb at the bottom of this lake was him. He wanted to turn away, to leave this vision, this spectre, whatever it was, but he could not leave Darrow. So he dragged his eyes away from his own carved face, and looked for something, anything else. He soon found it. Words, rough and unskilled, carved into the space beside the figure's shoulder. Cedar leaf. He remembered those words, from somewhere so long ago. He could almost smell a campfire. Someone was there, someone there with them. Someone said those words to Darrow, but he didn't know what they meant. He should ask. He needed to find the assassin. He needed to ask. He would give anything. Anything. The dark seemed to ask. Anything. But he had nothing. The dark seemed to want something he would be unwilling to give up. His title? Any claims to riches? No, that would not be enough. He was all too happy to surrender those. But what else could he give to the dark? A peaceful death. The idea fluttered into his heart, and with it came a slither of light. It lit up the marble tomb, a crack of light across the statue figure's lips. Could he do it? I surrender it. The words rang out in his head. I offer it in his place. Let me find him. And then, there he was. Darrow. Wreathed in pale feathers, hanging in the water above the two princes. His heart leapt, and he kicked off towards the hovering man. The feathers were cocooned tight. Erasmus had to prise them apart to reach Darrow's face. His hands brushed cold cheeks as he did, and blue eyes blinked slowly open. The prince saw they were filled with tears. He wrapped the assassin in his arms and held him tight as his insides continued to scream and burn. And so they rose together, steadily, cool water rushing gently by as they left the marble-carved Erasmus at the bottom of the lake. The tomb slowly sank into the gloom and out of their sight. An eternity later, they washed up, laying curled together on the bank, pale feathers scattered all around them. And that is where we're going to leave the story for today. Tune back in for part 13 next time. And in the meantime, everyone in the YouTube comments gets a vote. There are 3 options to choose from this week, so let me know in the comments down below which one you would like. Option number 1. The curse Erasmus is left with is immediately obvious. There is something visual or clear about him that means both he and Darrow know immediately there is something wrong. Option number 2. The curse Erasmus has been left with leaves a hint, but it's not clear enough to know exactly what is wrong just yet. And option number 3. There is absolutely nothing about Erasmus in body or soul to give away that he is now cursed. Vote away down in the YouTube comments below, and everyone over on Instagram and Patreon, you will have your own vote later in the week. Thank you for joining me in this crazy story chaos. I love you all. Don't forget to hydrate, and I will see you very, very soon.